on demand! Legal abortion on demand!
Conservatives in government and in law have been working for 50 years to overturn it, and this is the live reaction now.
On a 5-4 vote, taking away what was regarded as a fundamental right. Right now, new laws banning abortion are taking effect in several states.
It feels like a betrayal. It feels like my country doesn't love me and appreciate my body as a woman.
Abortion is not specifically addressed in the Constitution. Therefore, Roe v. Wade was incorrect from its very inception.
I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a long and deep-seated history in Texas of pro-choice activism. The sort of outsider opinion is that because of our geography and because of the inherent understood religiosity of the area, that it would be specifically a pro-life state and that most people would conform to those, very sort of Protestant conservative ideals, when in reality, it was women of all faith backgrounds, all socioeconomic backgrounds, sexuality and race who were seeking to control their reproductive capacity.
Pro-life to me means that I'm against the euthanization of children, including like women and men, just advocating for really the possibility of life, the preservation of life and as well as reproductive organs, really, because I believe that where life is there, then, humans there.
I think Texas is much more diverse than the public story is of Texas. I'm from Texas. I know wonderful, strong women from Texas. I think we miss a big part of that story. I don't know why we think everybody that lives in one state looks like one thing.
Cameras rolling. Make sure we got sync. Yeah, we got sync.
I don't identify as pro-choice. I identify as a proponent of reproductive justice, because choice comes from a place of privilege. If you pro-choice means you have to be able to pay for an abortion. You have to have the resources to find childcare, to take time off of your job, where reproductive justice focuses on the 3 tenets of the right to have a child, the right to not have a child, and the right to parent in safe and healthy environments. And I think that all 3 of those things are so integral to life and also womanhood. Because how can you ask people or require people or force people to bring a child into a situation where they cannot care for it? Children should be welcomed and be loved and wanted, as opposed to being seen as the consequence of sexual immorality.
As I get older, I realize I've been both pro-life and pro-choice. When my life was better and I was in college, I did consider myself pro-life. My life was going well. I was married. I had resources. I was getting an education, and that was not a choice I would make. I really do believe in accountability. In an ideal world, nobody would have to make those choices. But then life happens and things get harder, and you do have kids, and you can't predict What is going to happen to you? I mean, we almost lost our house. I was in a deep depression, suicidal, having 2 kids that needed to take care of every day, that I just got up to take care of them. The only reason I got up in the morning was like, this is what I have to do. And I did get pregnant, and I pretty much knew that it was either me or there's no way. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have, we didn't have insurance. And I had 2 kids that I had to take care of. I did have a miscarriage, and I'm very glad that that happened. I didn't do anything to make that happen. That's just what happened. But it completely changed my perspective on all of it.
I've been very blessed. I've always had health insurance. My parents always paid for it until I got a full-time job where the state paid for it. So there was never a point in my life where I did not have access to the healthcare that I needed. However, there was a point in my life where I had access to the healthcare that I needed, but the healthcare providers weren't listening to me. They were saying, well, you're in this much pain because you're overweight. So why don't you lose 100 pounds and then come back and we'll talk about it later. What had happened was I had a cyst on my ovary that was very lateral, meaning it was to the outside of my body, and it was putting a lot of pressure and weight on the fallopian tube, and it was twisting. So one of my internal organs was going into torsion, which cuts off the blood supply, which is incredibly painful. And we didn't figure that out for years because I was just fat, right? So when you think about someone like me, who is white, middle class, always had access to healthcare, has degrees in higher education, has never hurt for money in any way, and I still couldn't get the reproductive health care that I needed? Imagine how it is for women who have not been as incredibly fortunate as I am.
Colored women, specifically Black women's mortality rate when it comes to giving birth is 3 times higher than that of non-colored women. How is this possible? How has this even happened? And I find out that, you know, colored people are less likely to receive the proper medications really needed for whatever condition they claim they've been like feeling, whatever pain they've been feeling, whatever really they need to be brought in for.
State governments use welfare or any sort of supportive service as a weapon, and also fund crisis pregnancy centers that front themselves as abortion clinics, but will often trick women into waiting until it's too late for them to receive a first trimester abortion. And especially in a country that does not provide health care, where having a baby is much more dangerous than having an abortion. The US infant and maternal mortality rate is on par with third world countries. We do not, especially women of color, we do not care for our citizens in the way that is required if you're going to make these kind of hard and fast rules about who can and can't have children, when, why, how, whatever.
I had the intentions of having a home birth. I do not trust the hospitals to give birth in. I do not really trust doctors with medicine, period. I can't entirely trust the government either. And I understand that a lot of problems regarding the education system, regarding the healthcare system, the welfare system, you know, just anything that anyone from like a lower income or even middle class income that we believe can inherently help us, not all of it is necessarily good for us, and not all of it will necessarily help us in the long run. And I understand that some benefits, you know, not everyone can have, even if you do need it. So I feel like as far as that stuff goes, it's sad that we have to have a reliance really on self-education to take care of these issues. make sure I get the blue for that one. If you want to just do one look, I did decide to go with the carousel dress. I was thinking about how I want to do this. I decided to stay with the theme. When I think about it, like being a Christian, really, like Jesus died on the cross for my sins, and he's acknowledging, that was more or less God acknowledging the fact that though everyone had been in sin and death there, he has now given us the ability to have life. So I feel an obligation to extend that, especially to people and souls that haven't got a chance to walk the earth yet, in terms of advocating for the preservation of babies, in this case with abortion. For me, God is everywhere. I believe that all fountains of like spirituality really are founded on the creation, or God's creation of the earth. Things like this can be like shown in the Bible, where I even think of, like, I believe yesterday late at night I was thinking about like Hinduism and Buddhism, and how they both place an emphasis on like the decrease of yourself, or at least mostly Buddhism does, for like the increase of a spiritual enlightenment. And that's what God is. I mean, he illustrates very clearly that you quite literally have to die to yourself and deny yourself, so that way his his ruling, so that way he can fully take over and flourish really within your life. So I believe that's where a beginning of a lot of these principles that people have found come from. And specifically in this case, I believe that everyone's life really begins with, again, the fertilization of the egg, really, because in Jeremiah 1 and in Psalms 139, both of these passages, or at least verses within these chapters of these books, mention how God makes a plan for us even before we've exited the womb. So knowing that, I also have to consider the fact that, well, getting rid of the baby in that case would cause God's plan to be messed up, and then you're interfering with his will. So that's what shapes my views on this subject, really.
I mean, the conversation is don't get an abortion, but then what is somebody to do if they don't have medical insurance? How are they going to afford to have this baby? If they can't afford to have medical insurance, how are they going to afford to feed and clothe and provide medical care? And is that ethical for them to make these decisions? It's like, how is this going to happen? So ultimately, if we want to, it's like, can we hold more space for women and children instead of focusing on taking anything away? Because some people are in desperate situations. Is it, if you can't feed a child, should you bring a child into the world? If you're a survivor of sexual abuse, do you want to have a baby and put this baby up for adoption with, you don't know who? Because if your experiences, it can be anybody that could do that. Is that ethical to raise? There's so many questions. Can we help each other figure out what's broken, and then how do we use all that energy that we're fighting against something to fight? Instead of fighting, it's like, use that energy for service. How do I be of service to you? How do we honor spiritual principles? How do we honor the teachings of Jesus? And you go out and serve your brother. Jesus was in the streets helping people, and we've kind of lost that part of the message of, I am here to serve. And if we do that, then we ultimately change the system from the bottom up.